passive generation of free electrical energy. Demonstration of construction and testing. Cut iron wire to appropriate length for size of desired coil. Cut copper wire to appropriate complementary length to that of the iron wire. Wind the iron wire around a rotating shaft of desired size to form a coil. Note: this can be done by hand if needed. Wind the copper wire around a shaft to form a coil. Note: I advise a ratio of no less than 15:1 from wire to shaft. Note: this can be done by hand if needed. Stretch out, and then completely compress the stretched out copper coil. This will leave a somewhat uniformly spaced coil. Anneal the stretched out copper coil on both sides. All copper has a coating of some kind, including raw copper. Clean the burnt coating from the annealed copper with a rag. Apply a small piece of double-sided tape to the top and bottom of the iron wire coil. Wind a thin piece of cotton cloth onto the taped iron wire coil. Using another small piece of double-sided tape, fix the end of the cotton cloth in place. Wind the annealed copper wire around the cloth-covered iron wire coil. Be sure to wind the annealed copper wire snugly, not tightly, onto the cloth-covered iron wire coil. If the copper wire is too tight, a dead short may occur. Note: this can be done by hand if needed. Sand the annealed copper wire end for ease of soldering, and orientate the two coil ends as desired. Note: a through coil arrangement can also be configured. Copper and iron coil ends opposing. Test for continuity. If continuity is found, discard coil, or deconstruct and reassemble. Solder in place a small capacitor. Any capacitor will work to a varying degree. However, as a guideline, large capacitors for large coils and small capacitors for small coils. Test a single system with a multimeter on millivolts. Depending on coil size and capacitor size, the system can reach just over 400 millivolts. Delineation of device. Preamble. To all the ignorant people saying, "This device could not power a city," I would like to say to you simpletons, there's a time machine out the back. It looks like a blue phone box. You can go back and tell the Wright brothers, the Kitty Hawk is a piece of junk because it cannot carry hundreds of people halfway around the world like an A380 can. Or you can go back and tell Stuart, his first diesel engine is pointless, because it does not have the horsepower to drive a 50-carriage freight train. Or a 10,000 TEU container ship. This is a proof of concept. It is only to demonstrate the theory in a tangible manner, the development of which will have to be done by people around the world with access to laboratories and manufacturing facilities, to which I have been denied. Premise 1. Thermic physics. We find the first premise in thermic physics: all matter has some degree of thermal energy. All matter has a unique ability to absorb and to retain thermal energy. In a room with an ambient temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, not all matter in the room will be at the same exact temperature. A block of steel will be at a different temperature to that of a block of timber the same size. If the ambient temperature were to fluctuate, the thermal energy difference between the two, the steel and timber, will become significantly greater. The block of steel in a warming, ambient environment will lag behind in its rising temperature, in comparison to that of the block of timber. Inversely, a cooling, ambient environment will see the block of steel remain at a high temperature for longer than that of the timber. Every piece of matter has a thermal energy value, including our air, or, should I say, our atmosphere. After all, our atmosphere is matter, a super very small pieces of matter. All matter has a thermal value, including our atmosphere. Premise 2. Inherent electrical charge. All matter has a thermal value, including our atmosphere. All matter has an inherent electrical charge or value, including our atmosphere. Matter can be charged and discharged as easily as it can be heated and cooled. All matter in our atmosphere, and all objects within the atmosphere, are charged by the electrical energy radiated by the sun. Everything has a natural state of charge. This charge is supplied to everything by the sun through our atmosphere. Every single thing you can see has a degree of electrical charge. And if something is discharged, the atmosphere starts recharging it instantly, until a natural state of equilibrium is reached, its inherent electrical charge. Inversely, if a mass within our atmosphere is overcharged, it will dissipate any charge exceeding its inherent state of electrical charge into the atmosphere until it reaches its natural state of equilibrium, its inherent state of electrical charge. A simple experiment to determine your own electrical charge can be done also. In one hand hold a piece of raw copper wire, in the other hand a piece of iron wire. Have the copper wire connected to the positive side of a multimeter, and the iron wire to the negative side of the multimeter. Depending on your age, gender, and health, you will get a reading of between 500 and 900 millivolts. This can also be done with the copper and iron in water. Premise 3. Differing characteristic in a single mass. A single mass with varying thermic properties. Water is one mass, or body of mass in which we can find varying thermic properties. A large square steel container, in which could be held 1 cubic meter of water, located at sea level. If we then heated that cubic meter of water to 100 degrees Celsius, because the very top of that body of water only has the atmosphere exerting pressure upon it, it will boil at 100 degrees. The lower portion of the cubic meter of water, however, will not boil. The lower portion of water will bear the atmospheric pressure, plus the weight of the water above it. A car's radiator is one such example. of an increased boiling point by pressurization. The lower portion of the cubic meter of water will have to exceed 100 degrees in order for it to boil. Therefore, the lower portion of water will have a higher boiling point than that of the top portion of water. One body of mass and two boiling points, or should I say, a varying boiling point. Premise 4. Thermal transference. Thermal transference can be direct, a frying pan, sifting on an electric stove top. Indirect, a baking dish, inside an oven, with a thermal transference pathway of the oven heating element to air inside the oven, and onto the baking dish, from the air. Thermal transference can also be within the one single mass, or body of mass. A pot of water, on a stove top, will be heated from the bottom of the pot. However, the top of the water in the pot will heat almost uniformly to that of the bottom. Thermal transference, or thermal conductivity. Thermal transference can also be seen in internal combustion engines' cooling system. The coolant water is heated inside the engine. The heated coolant water is then pumped to the radiator, where it emits its thermic energy to the atmosphere. Description 1. Manufactured mass. A coil of iron wire is a manufactured mass that has a varying inherent electrical charge within the same body of mass, much like water can have a varying boiling point within the same body of water. When a piece of iron wire is manufactured in a straight line and remains in a straight line, the wire has a uniformed pressure of its mass. If we were to apply this uniformity to our body of 1 cubic meter of water, we would see the entire body of water boil uniformly when heated. This could occur in zero gravity, for example. However, we know the 1 cubic meter of water does not have a uniformed pressure or tension in our atmosphere at sea level, as it has an observable, varying boiling point. When we take the iron wire, which is manufactured in a straight line, and roll it into a tight coil, we no longer have a uniformed pressure of mass. The iron wire coil will take on characteristics similar to that of the 1 cubic meter of water. Not in a thermic manner, but in an inherent electrical charge manner. The inner portion of the iron wire coil is slightly compressed. The outer portion of the iron wire coil is slightly stretched or decompressed. We now have a manufactured mass with a varying inherent electrical charge. Description 2. Energy conduction. To correlate the premise further, between the body of water and the manufactured iron wire coil. A body of water has a uniform ability of thermal transference, thermal conductivity. If one portion of the body of water is heated, the thermal energy will transfer to all portions of the water. A pot of water on a stove top is only heated from the bottom. However, all of the water will rise in temperature. Thermal transfer within a body of mass. The manufactured iron wire coil, like all metals, has a uniformed ability of electrical transference or conductivity. If we charge one portion of a piece of metal, all of that metal will become charged. This can be commonly seen in the use of bus bars in circuit boards. Description 3. Varying inherent electrical charge. The inside of the iron wire coil has a different or varied inherent electrical charge compared to that of the outside of the iron wire coil. This is due to its difference in tension from inside to outside. If we postulate that a straight piece of iron wire has a natural state of charge in our atmosphere of 0.8 volts, We could then surmise the inside of the coiled iron wire has a natural charge state of 1 volt in our atmosphere due to its compressed state. We could also surmise the outside of the coiled iron wire has a natural state of charge of 0.6 volts in our atmosphere due to its decompressed state, giving our manufactured iron wire coil a variation of 0.4 of a volt or 400 millivolts from inside to outside. Description 4. Convection of charge. Everything has a state of natural charge, including the inside and the outside of our iron wire coil. Mass has an ability to discharge its excess charge into the atmosphere if its natural state of charge is exceeded. And if a mass is discharged below its natural state of charge, the charged atmosphere has the ability to recharge it back to its natural state. So, we have a mass, our iron wire coil, that is trying to be two different states of charge at the same time. As previously stated, with thermal energy and our body of water, a mass will always try to find an equilibrium of its thermal indifference. A pot of water on a stove top, heat it on the bottom, and all water will heat up. Thermal transference, or thermal conduction. The iron wire coil will also try and find an equilibrium of its different natural states of charge, from the inside to the outside of the coil. As with the water's thermal transference, the iron wire coil has the ability to, and will always try, to come to an equilibrium of electrical charge within its body of mass, as shown with a bus bar. The inner part of the iron wire coil, at 1 volt, will constantly be overcharging the outer part of the coil, which has a natural state of charge of 0.6 volts. Therefore the inner portion of the iron wire coil will constantly and indefinitely be overcharging the outside portion of the iron wire coil by 0.4 of a volt or 400 millivolts. The outer part of the coil will then emit its overcharging as electrical radiation into the atmosphere. This is replicated in thermic physics by a car's radiator emitting its excess thermal energy into the atmosphere. This process of the outer portion of the iron wire coil being overcharged and emitting its excess charge to the atmosphere will inherently leave the inner side of the iron wire coil discharged to a lower than natural state of charge in its compressed state. Having given up some of its electrical energy to the outer side of the iron wire coil, and the outside of the iron wire coil subsequently emitting said energy, the inner side of the iron wire coil will be recharged by the atmosphere. The electrically charged atmosphere will constantly try to maintain everything at its natural state of charge. The iron wire coil, with its different tension of mass, will continuously overcharge the outside of the coil. The outside of the coil will then constantly emit its overcharge back to the atmosphere. This process of energy convection and compression is sequential and perennial. This phenomenon can also be felt by human hand. If an iron wire coil is held at its end with one hand and held aloft over the back of the other hand, a slight tingling or warming sensation can be felt. That sensation is the electrical radiation or overcharged atmosphere being emitted by the iron wire coil. Description 5. Utilizing the emitted overcharge. By passive actions of the iron wire coil, we now have an over-energized microenvironment in a circumference around the iron wire coil. Mass within this altered microenvironment will have an elevated inherent electrical charge if measured in comparison to mass in the natural environment. By placing a second coil of soft and electrically absorbent wire coil around the primary iron wire coil, we are able to overcharge the second coil due to it being in our overcharged microenvironment. The iron wire coil we can refer to as the emitting coil, and the outer coil, the cumulation coil. In essence, the cumulation coil is capturing the amplified electrical radiation being generated and emitted by the emitter coil. The cumulation coil is now at an overcharged state when compared to that of the same mass, not in the altered microenvironment. We have now an overcharged cumulation coil. If we run a wire from the cumulation coil to an earth point, a reading of electrical flow or electrical current can be detected. This reading can also be obtained by placing the negative multimeter probe onto the emitter coil. Furthermore, the emitter and cumulation coils can be wired together with a capacitor in position. The capacitor will store the electrical energy generated by the two coils and allow the voltage to reach its maximum potential. These two coils, the emitter and the cumulation, I refer to as an atmospheric electrical energy condenser, abbreviated to AEC. For simplicity of circuit diagrams, I illustrate an AEC thusly: the emitter coil represented here, and the cumulation coil here. An array of AEC units can be arranged in a parallel circuit to maximize amperage. AEC units can also be arranged in series to increase voltage. This electrical current can then be utilized as a form of free energy. It is in effect an atmosphere-powered electric generator with no moving parts, no pollution, and no adverse effect on anyone or anything in our environment. Once constructed, an AEC will produce free electricity for 300 plus years in optimal conditions, and possibly indefinitely. Description 6. Materials of an AEC. The two metals I have found to work best are, for the emitter coil, a soft steel wire, which is a galvanized wire with a high iron content, known as tie wire. For the cumulation coil, raw annealed copper wire. The copper wire must be annealed and free from any coating. Other wire can be used: aluminium, stainless steel, and others. I suspect all metal wire can be used to some effect. I have however found copper and iron to work best. If a dual aluminium AEC is required for aviation, for example, then the emitter coil must be hard drawn, and the cumulation coil must be annealed and not overworked. Between the two coils, there must be a separator. This is not an insulator. If an insulator is used, the AEC will not work. The separator is in position to stop the emitter coil from touching the cumulation coil and causing a dead short. For the separator, I have found thin cotton cloth to work best. However, other non-insulative material will work as well, such as paper. Adding a capacitor to the circuit will allow the current to build to the maximum voltage the AEC or the AEC array can achieve. The larger the capacitor, the longer it will take to achieve maximum voltage. The myth of electric energy generation. We do not have to burn matter or detonate matter to generate kinetic energy, to extract electrical energy. We never have had to, and we never should have started that lunacy to begin with. Humanity is currently splitting atoms, creating nuclear waste that we will have to deal with for the next 10,000 plus years. Just to run a steam engine that can power a generator? If it's flammable, humanity is burning it. If it's combustible, humanity is incinerating it. If it's flowing, humanity will dam it. If it's fissionable, humanity will split it. And to hell with the consequences. This lunacy must stop, and it must stop now. Humanity does not have to destroy to create. This is something we have unlearned, and it is time we right this wrong. Preservation of atmospheric environment. All electricity we use today, other than single-use chemical batteries, comes from our atmosphere, charged by the sun. I would conservatively estimate that over 99% of our electricity comes from the atmosphere, charged by the sun. Let me explain. The basic operation of a generator is as follows. The synopsis is relevant to all kinetic energy to electricity energy generation, from the smallest hand-crank dynamo torch to the biggest penstock-driven turbine generator you can think of. Copper wire is arranged in a coil. Inside the coil is a magnet rotating on an axis, driven by an external rotating force, a sacrificial kinetic energy. When the magnet rotates past the copper wire, the magnetic force repels the electrical energy, or electrons, in the copper wire. This action is done at such velocity, an electrical current is expelled from the end of the copper coil. The bigger the copper coil and magnet, and the faster the magnet spins, the more amps and volts generated. However, as we know, nothing is infinite. And only nothing can come from nothing. If the amount of electricity a generator could produce was to come from only the electrical charge the copper wire could initially hold, the generator would not produce a current for more than a second or two. Therefore, the only logical conclusion is that the copper wire, once discharged by the magnet, is immediately recharged by the atmosphere once the magnet has rotated past the discharged area of the copper wire. The term electrical generator is a misnomer. We do not make electricity. We just condense it, or compress it, and move it from one place to another. An electricity generator should in fact be called an atmospheric energy condenser, or an atmospheric energy compressor. Nothing is being generated or produced, just compressed or condensed. The electricity we use to heat and light our home, turn on our TV, charge our phone, all comes from our atmosphere, in a very convoluted and pollutionary way. Self-regulating to an equilibrium. If we took a snapshot of the energy in our atmosphere today, we would have enough energy to power the needs of mankind for thousands of years. Furthermore, the supply of atmospheric energy is constantly being replenished by the sun. The sun, emitting its energy to Earth, is a mega-macro analogy to the micro-AEC and its emitting and accumulation coil. The sun emits its energy, and the Earth collects it. Our atmosphere's electrical charge is governed by the Earth's rotation. The Earth's magnetic core the Van Allen radiation belt, the atmosphere itself, and other natural phenomena. All these occurrences combine to produce a somewhat constant degree of atmospheric electrical charge. And as this governance, or regulation, to the state of charge of our atmosphere is a natural phenomenon, a natural state of equilibrium will always be sought. Even if Earth's human population was to reach 100 billion, and everything was powered by energy from the atmosphere, we would still not have a detrimental effect to it, because the more energy we use, the more energy will be allowed into the Earth's atmosphere by the natural governing phenomenon. In essence, the equilibrium will constantly be sought, and ultimately achieved. Think of the atmosphere's electrical energy governing phenomenon as a giant gas regulator, and the sun as a giant gas bottle that never runs out. The more energy we use, the more energy the regulator will let into the Earth's atmosphere. Politics, the disinformation of employment disengagement. If you are one of the ignorant people who believe this technology is going to detrimentally put people out of work, that time machine I spoke of earlier is still out the back. You and all the other ignorant people can pile in. You'll all fit. It's bigger on the inside. You can use the time machine to go back to the 1770s and tell America not to abolish slavery, because the slave traders will lose their jobs. Or maybe the ignorant people think we should never have advised the masses to stop smoking, because the tobacco industry will decline. Or that cancer should never be cured, because that will see millions of healthcare workers having to find other employment. Maybe the ignorant people think we should stop all factory automation and force millions of people back into hard labor. Or maybe, just maybe, the ignorant people should be seen and not heard. Politics, cognitive dissonance. For those who have been indoctrinated into the common lexicon of mainstream education, I would imagine your intellectual capacity would have been reached about 10 or 15 minutes ago. And by now, all that the indoctrinated person can hear in their head is 1,000 voices screaming, "No, no, no." But I'm here to tell you, we're literally walking around in a super-free electrical energy. We just have to extract it, condense it, and humanity will have a clean and abundant source of free energy for the rest of time. If your contention is that strong, and you are still supporting your cognitive dissonance, then please construct an AEC array with your own hands, and preform your own tests. I welcome anyone to attempt to disprove the science. This method of compressing the atmospheric energy into a usable source of electricity is certitude. Politics, power from the scant to the all and sundry. Currently, humanity has found itself in the hideously repugnant situation where a very small handful of people are in financial and physical control of the known energy supply. Today will be one of the last days that group of plutocratic parasites can claim custody of their ill-gotten gains. Energy belongs to no one, and definitely does not belong to the parasitic oligarchs currently holding it hostage for political and financial gain. Energy is not a commodity. It is free. Energy is no more an item for purchase than is a bucket of air. We don't pay some billionaire freeloader every time we breathe air into our lungs, do we? No. And we should not be paying every time we turn on a light. Mankind needs 2. Stop paying to use any form of energy that pollutes and destroys humanity's home planet. We all must start using a clean, environmentally inert, self-replenishing, free energy. The human family needs to take back its freedom and end this energy hoax, power from the scan to the all and sundry. Conclusion. Every home, farm, or factory, every car, bike, boat, train, plane, and tractor can be powered by this method, condensing free atmospheric energy. The energy we are observing here is not directly electrical current, per se, but more of an echo, or a reverberation, of a greater force, or energy, being utilized, in such a way, as to generate a utilizable, and disposable electric current. If you hold up your left hand, as though you are holding a tennis ball, and hold up your right hand, as though you are holding a tennis ball in that hand as well, in your left hand, you are holding enough renewable energy to power all your home's energy requirements for the rest of your life. In your right hand, you are holding enough renewable energy to power all your transport energy requirements for the rest of your life. The power is quite literally in your hands. Passive generation of free electrical energy. What once was will always be. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them.
Albert Einstein.
Electric power is everywhere, present in unlimited quantities, and can drive the world's machinery, without the need of coal, oil, gas, or any other common fuels. Nikola Tesla. It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer.
Albert Einstein.
It is dangerous to be right, in matters on which the established authorities are wrong. Voltaire. Look deep into nature, and you will understand everything better.
Albert Einstein.
If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough.
Albert Einstein.
The heresy of one age becomes the orthodoxy of the next. Helen Keller.